So today I'm here with Eric Masaba, who's a fellow ambassador with the State of the African Diaspora. Eric, I just asked you a question because I was going to play a song for you, but then I asked you, I said, what is your favorite music? And I just thought it was a fascinating answer, so I want the viewers to hear it.
Oh, I love old school jazz funk from the 70s and 80s, and obviously the revival in the 90s. So Vividry has a great song called Your Good Lies, which a famous podcaster would use as his intro. But anything from that time, Light of the World, Incognito, Weather Report, that's kind of my ken. I love all that from the 70s and 80s. As you know, everything comes around again. So in the 90s, we had 70s revival, and a lot of Gen Zs now are getting into 90s and 2000s revival. So it's kind of weird to go two generations round.
So yeah, you like two generations back, right? That's it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that that's next level, literally and figuratively.
Yeah. How about yourself? What sort of
So
music?
yeah, I'm a big fan of '90s hip hop, especially West Coast and East Coast. I was born in the '80s, so technically I grew up in the '90s, and I grew up with everything technology wise and cypherpunk, land
Oh, of
parties,
course.
raves. Like I mean, Harare had it going on in the '90s.
Oh, wow. Of course. Yeah, because I remember that whole time. Obviously,
Yeah.
you had the Ice Cube and the
Oh yeah.
NWA stuff, right? That was just starting. Also, New Jack Swing, that was the
Yeah.
late 80s, early
Mhm.
90s. And
Mhm.
then we were just transitioning out of the cassette into mini disc and all
And
those things
CDs.
as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you were born in the UK, right?
Yeah. Well, no, I was born in Uganda.
Oh, you're born in
And
Uganda. Okay. And when
but
did you
my
move to the UK?
1977, right just after we'd got through the 3-day week where Britain was bankrupt and had to switch the electricity off 4 days a week. Can you believe
Wow.
this?
That was
Yeah,
Margaret Thatcher time, right?
that was before Margaret Thatcher. That's what got her elected because Labour, we had a Labour government, so a left-wing government, and there were lots of problems with the unions. Obviously, this was post-colonial stuff, so there was a lot of rents that the Britain had got free, same with France. The oil shock in 73, 74 that really hit both Britain and France. And
Yeah.
that'll become more relevant in this conversation a bit later. So we arrived in Liverpool, a formerly great port city, which was the second city of the empire, in some respects, the more important city because of trade with the Atlantic facing trade. And that was being hollowed out. So you probably saw the same thing in Long Beach and on the East Coast in Baltimore and whatever in the United States, where containerization would have killed a lot of dock workers and all their jobs. And so you had the same thing in Liverpool, where a huge number of longshoremen and dock workers were suddenly laid off. And so Liverpool and the whole northwest region, especially Merseyside, lost something like quarter of a million jobs in about 10 years, which was just beyond comprehension. I mean, when you consider the general population was about a million, and that's everybody, to lose quarter of a million jobs, it's like Detroit. Just like Detroit went from 2.2 million down to whatever 800,000 or something or less, and all those jobs went. That was Liverpool as well. So it was a challenging time, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. You need difficulty and things to overcome to develop your character. So I could look back and think, oh, it was awful, it was bad. But I look at it as a great strengthening and toughening experience because without that sort of difficulty, I wouldn't have been able to survive the last 20 odd years. As hard as it wasn't anything as hard as growing up in 1970s Liverpool. It was just hardly anybody had jobs, and every year more people left. I think in 2005, Liverpool recorded three more people coming than leaving for the first time in some like 30 years, and that was a big deal.
Wow.
So the city's it's taken its blows. It was an interesting thing because Scousers are the closest things to black people in uh in the UK because they are reviled by the rest of the UK. They have a strange accent. We have a way of looking at things, doing things, a bit like Southerners in the United States, people from Mississippi, Kentucky, Louisiana, whatever. They've got a specific accent, so they're identifiable. And in Liverpool, Liverpool people don't even say they're English. They say we're not English, we're Scouse. So Liverpool's a strange mix of Irish.
Scouse.
Yeah, Scouse. That's what people from Liverpool are called. So
And so
Liverpool's a
it's a
strange
strange mix between Irish and what else?
Irish, Welsh, Scottish, and people from West Africa. Seriously.
West Africa.
Yeah, it's got the oldest black population in Europe and the oldest Chinese population, I believe, or something. It's bizarre. It's a very, very you could not make it up if you describe Liverpool, people would say that's ridiculous. That's like a Terry Pratchett novel. That's like his made up city of Ankh-Morpork. But Liverpool is what it is.
So you're saying that the Scouse people are mixed with Irish, in Chinese, and West Africans?
No, Irish, Welsh, Scottish. So that's why they don't really say they are English, right? And
Yeah.
then there's the oldest black population in maybe Europe is in Liverpool, continuous black population, and one of the oldest Chinese populations as well is there. Now, they're not very many. I mean, 4% is a big number of non-whites. When I was growing up, it was 2%. So that made it easy for me to not be worried about not being in a majority or whatever. It's never bothered me. Almost all my life, I've always been the only black person in whichever context. But Liverpool, it's like black people because when you have a Liverpool accent, people will look down on you in the UK. It's just is what it is. And Liverpool was seen as poor and thieves and not trustworthy. So they became very insular and became very good at sport, football, and music because nobody else would give them a chance. So very, very similar, almost an exact parallel to the African American experience, funny enough.
Wow, and that's when was at the same time Bruce Grobler was playing for Liverpool. He was the goalie.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
he was very popular. He's still a legend here. There was a delivery van parked outside my house a few years ago, and it had Grobler or something or other on it. So he still does something in the sea. I think
Really?
he
So
was,
he still they still like him in Liverpool, eh?
yeah, he absolute legend. He was the goalkeeper on that when Liverpool was on that tear when we dominated everything in British football and Europe as well.
Yeah.
And there's always been Scottish people like Kenny Dalglish. He obviously was Grobler's teammate and he was the captain and the manager as well. And he's from Scotland. And right now, the current captain of Liverpool is another Scottish guy. So we had Kevin Keegan, Kenny Dalglish, all these people from Scotland. We had people from Newcastle as well, which is the evil twin of Liverpool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Which has
yeah,
really good beer, by the way. Newcastle beer. I love it.
yeah, yeah, fantastic. Have you been to the UK?
I've been to London twice, but it was one of those like fly in and then fly out. I never really got to see, even though being Zimbabwean, the British. I went to Prince Edward School, and we were all about the British. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying? We were
London.
colonized hard.
London, fly in and get pickpocketed. I mean, everything in London's about taking money off you and then
Yeah.
fly
So,
out
but I
again.
plan on coming, and maybe we can go watch a game at Liverpool and listen to. Maybe we can meet Bruce Grobler. That'll be something, eh? Like a
That would,
Zimbabwean Bruce Grobler and a
a
Ugandan
lot
in Liverpool.
those people, a lot of them are still from that team. They're still kind of in the like John Barnes. Although when he started here,
Yeah.
he was from Watford, and Liverpool was. I think he was the first black player for Liverpool, so things were difficult for him. But he loved it so much afterwards. He now lives on the Wirral, just across the river,
Yeah.
and so that's funny. Yeah, that'd be good. I've never actually been to a football match. Can you believe?
You've
Because
never been. You've
I've never
never
been to a
been to
football
a
match
football match.
anywhere ever because in the 70s and 80s there was so much racism. It was actually quite dangerous. And if you went to a football ground, it was just how it was. People would chant monkey noises or whatever
Really?
else. Oh yeah, it was
Shit.
horrible.
That was,
And
that sounds like really racist. No.
well, yeah, it was racist. I don't think most of the actual people doing it were because I know the difference between real racists, people who really just want to hurt you or think you shouldn't have anything,
Yeah, yeah.
and then just people who did what was considered the norm. There is quite a difference. But yeah, it was a difficult experience. So one, and that'll be good because I have got to yet go to an actual football match in a stadium anywhere in the world because I was so traumatized as a kid. But that's something which I will face and I'll get over it. So yeah, that we'll do that when you come over.
Okay.
We'll go
So
to
my
couple of.
cousin plays professional football in the UK.
Oh wow,
His name
which
is,
team
well,
does
my
he play?
sorry, my he's my nephew because my cousin's son.
Yeah.
So his father is Conrad and he's Brendan Galloway. Yeah.
Okay, which team does he play for? Do you
Um,
know?
Plymouth Argyle.
That's
It's a
still that.
EFL.
Yeah. No,
Do you know it?
still, yeah, I know it. Green, they've got a green kit, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, his name is Brendan Galloway. So he's my cousin, and maybe we can go watch him, and
Oh, yeah, we'll figure
that'll
something
be
out because,
interesting. No?
yeah, that'd be good. Well, Liverpool didn't have any investment for a long time, and it was considered to be so poor that we got EU emergency funding in the 80s. Because the government was at war with Liverpool. Liverpool's very left wing and they were seen as guilty communists. So the government cut them off from funding. They were at war with Margaret Thatcher. Although she sent Michael Heseltine up here, who arranged for investment to be put in. But what's interesting about this is that there's a lot of talent in Liverpool and in black communities and any other communities, which, if it can't find expression in the normal gate kept sort of places or professions you'd go to, it will output its positivity, its energy through things like sport, music, literature, or crime. If you think about it, what crime represents is just a frustrated energy finding expression in another network which isn't as gate kept. And in a way, I'm not saying it's okay, I'm just saying it does happen. Crime tells you what a free market does. So when people say the black market, well, the black market's just the free market because a lot of markets have gatekeepers. And in the last sort of 3 or 4 months, I learned a new phrase, high betweenness, and this is really important for Black entrepreneurs to understand. Sometimes the path to capital only passes through a small number of gatekeepers. I know the record industry is like this, and maybe some sports things like this. But at least with sport, if you can literally run faster than anybody else, or you can hit that baseball out of the stadium, or you can, do how many rushing yards, somebody's going to notice. Somebody's going to say, "Hey, this Moodley guy, he's pretty good. Let's give him a chance." But in other cases, even if you're good enough, there's gatekeeping. They'll say, "Oh, well, he wasn't artistic enough, or we didn't like the way he landed that, whatever," and so they'll find ways and means to disqualify you from things. So Liverpool had all that with its politics and its accent and whatever else. That's why you got the Beatles. That's why you got a lot of British music. A really unbelievable amount comes from Liverpool, apart from the Beatles. Same with footballers, actors, comedians. Exactly what you'd expect if all the other paths to greatness or wealth are cut off. And that is very similar to the what we call the black experience. The key thing is to do podcasts like this to show people that there are ways. At least Liverpool got visibility. Obviously, almost everybody's heard of the Beatles. I'm not sure if Gen Z people have heard of the Beatles, but maybe they have. But outside of the UK, Liverpool doesn't have any negative connotations. It's only in the UK it does, because a lot of people, the only city they've heard of outside of London is often Liverpool, outside of the UK, bizarrely. I mean, in Zimbabwe, is Liverpool well known? Is it famous? I mean, the Grobler
Oh
went there.
man, in Zimbabwe, like Bruce Grobler made it like a religion. If you're from Bulawayo, like
Oh my
everyone in
goodness.
Bulawayo loves Liverpool because it's like, I don't know, like Bulawayo's also got that history where it was a big like industrial town in the 70s and 80s,
Uh-huh.
and then all of a sudden, I think, I don't know, China, just all the industry was lost to somewhere, and
Uh-huh.
all the jobs are lost, and now you got all these derelict buildings and a lot of people, but the people from there are extremely loyal to Liverpool because of Bruce Grobler.
Interesting.
And like
Oh,
some
that
people don't
is
even know, but I know. I'm like, yeah, you guys just like Bruce Grobler. You know what I'm
oh
saying?
no, absolute legend. And he was such a comedian and
Yeah.
everything else. And
And
that
he's a
was one.
legend in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
Like Bruce Grobler, he was one of the only white farmers that didn't get his farm taken away.
Oh, I never knew he was a farmer. Oh my
And I think he
goodness.
actually got like more stuff, like game parks and other stuff. So,
Oh my God.
I mean, but he's just not seen as, like different. He's like, yeah, you one of us.
Yeah. Oh no, he was really popular here, and there
He's a
was
brother, if you know what I'm saying.
exactly, and there was another footballer called Jan Molby who was from Denmark. Okay, but
Yeah.
when he came here, he picked up the Scouse accent. He sounds, when he speaks English, he sounds like a Scouser. Everybody was shocked. They were like, "But you're Danish. You sound exactly like everybody." So even to this day, he's still well regarded, and it just goes to show you that when you show people you respect, when you really immerse yourself in the culture, you can make great things happen. So
Yeah.
those are great. I mean, Grabala is still, as I said, he's still a legend. I think anybody definitely over the age of 40 knows exactly who he is, remembers. There are probably even some 30-year-olds who remember. But yeah, that was some great times, and that gave Liverpool pride. It made us
Yeah.
feel that we could actually
Because that
earn
was
our
the
way.
time when he was going through some trouble, right?
Yeah, well, lots of people were. There were all the bribery allegations and all sorts of things.
No, no, no. I meant trouble within Liverpool. That's when the economy was.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, that was
Yeah,
about
we
50.
don't talk about all that other stuff that happened.
50 years of trouble, I'd say.
You were like, yeah,
When,
all that other stuff
yeah,
that's
oh
forgotten
no, no,
about.
no, we don't talk about that.
We're not talking about
Um,
the economy and
yeah,
everything.
only through the 80s, my goodness me, it was just one thing closing after the other. As I said, from 1978 to 1985, I think Liverpool City, not just the region, might have lost something like 100,000 jobs. And was a city of technically 600,000 people. The greater region might have had 1 or 2 million or 1.5 million. They lost 250,000 jobs. So, and the problem is, once those things close down, people move and it doesn't come back. You've seen the same thing in the Rust Belt in the United States, in maybe the same as Bulawayo. You've seen the same thing in Detroit, Pittsburgh, all those steel places, Cincinnati. And it's very hard to find something else. Even South Florida. I mean, Florida's got a reputation in people's minds as a big, rich party place, but I do believe South Florida has quite a few challenges. And if they hadn't got the shuttle program there in '86, it would have been much worse.
Wow.
So these things are repeated, and a lot of them can be resolved with some old ideas like rotating saving and credit accounts, VOSCAs, I think they're called, or SUSU or partner. Diaspora communities often club together to lend each other money. So if a bank won't lend to you, you lend to you. And that actually stops the predatory interest. And that can even help if they're derelict buildings. What you can do is you can say to people, let's club together. Five of us do up this building. Once it's done up, we'll find another building, do it up. Same sort of thing. We've got a place to live while we're doing it up and we're creating value. There is a way to actually do that at scale, make it federated. And really, what Texi always was the same idea. There's underused assets which could be made better use of, and we can actually share that value with the people who are making use of it.
Sorry,
It's a very good
you
idea.
jump straight into Texi, and I think I think you should tell the people who you are.
Oh, well, bizarrely, lots of people have heard of Uber, the taxi hailing startup, and think that was one guy, Travis Kalanick, and maybe Garrett Camp, his co-founder, who came up with that in 2009 and got big investments in 2010 and scaled it. The truth is, it was actually me in 2004 at a hedge fund in Connecticut. They'd asked me to help them with something called credit contagion modeling. We did something called capital structure arbitrage, where you can see if a company is going to default and you can bet on it defaulting before it does and make money, however moral that is or not. And I realized the same thing could be done with taxis. Often a taxi's driving from A to B and it's got 4 seats in that people could use. It's just taking one person. And a very simple thing is if there was a way to basically advertise this on an exchange, say, look, this taxi is going from here to here, it's got 4 seats in, instead of every single person waiting for their own taxi and paying $25 or whatever it was, what if you all paid only $7 each? So 4 of you pay $7, it's $28. The cab driver makes a bit more. Everybody wins, there's less congestion. Obviously, you can't just put strangers in. Some might smell, some might be dangerous. So you have a social network to group these up. So back in 2003, 2004, the whole idea of a social network was still kind of proto university. You'd have to have known about Friendster, Orkut, Tribe, which were the only ones available then. And most of them were still kind of in beta or within a university. Facebook was still called The Facebook, it was only in Harvard. Then this idea of geolocation, where people didn't realize your phone could tell the network where you were. Sounds obvious now, but 20 odd years ago, 23 years ago, that was like science fiction. And so combining these two things, geolocation and social network members, was even more bizarre. And the only reason I did that was because to try and get from the railway station to this hedge fund where I was going to work, because they gave me a 3-month time to kind of work out my route, because they'd given me a job offer. And they said, well, you have to wait for your visa, but you can come over and start to figure out where you're going to live and wherever else. So I couldn't because I wasn't there yet. On a tourist visa, you can't get a car. I don't think you can rent a car easily. So I had to take taxis everywhere. And every morning at this station, I was having to pay $25, I think, was it $15? It was something ridiculous each way just to get from the station to the workplace. And this was adding up. And I was saying, I see the same people here every day. I'm sure we could coordinate and drop the prices. So that's where the idea was born. And 10 or 12 years before that, I'd worked in National Grid, which is the electricity distributor here in the UK. I think you've got the same thing in the US. So you've got your power stations, but you've got to put your power lines across the country, which move the electricity. You can actually figure out how much power you can put down there based on the temperature of the ambient air, how much wind there is, if there's cloud cover, if it's sunny. And if none of those conditions are met, you can actually put more power down because the limiting factor is the temperature of the line. If it gets too warm, you'll get a discharge, which will trip all the circuit breakers, which happened in July 2003 in New York City, where there was a massive blackout which tripped across Canada and the US. So that's why it's important to limit the exposure of the lines to heating. So this was where I realized you could actually use weather or traffic demand patterns to figure out how much load you could put on a particular network. So the same idea, perishable capacity. If you know you've got a car with spare seats, then you just have to coordinate that with somebody who needs a ride somewhere.
What if you had a bus, like a small, not a big bus, but a smaller bus, like with maybe
exactly
7 people?
In fact, on my presentations, I say I don't even see the difference between a bus or a taxi. All we have are vehicles with capacity from whether it's 4 seats or 50 seats or 70 seats. That's the whole point. The economics really work really well with a bus. For example, on Texxi.co, which is my store of papers, there's one which shows a market opportunity, which says, what if we had 100 8-seater cabs in New York City just doing 4 trips a day and whatever, and it gets
But I
really
mean, lots of
quickly.
people have like a minivan. Like I got a
Exactly.
minivan,
That'd be perfect.
you
Imagine if
know?
you could sell the spare seats in your minivan
Yeah.
in exchange. There we go. So you're getting
I mean, it's
paid.
just sitting there right now, not
Yep.
earning.
There you go.
And it needs
Imagine
to
if
be on the streets. I need that money.
well, it's the same thing as if you got spare room in your house and you want
Yeah.
to rent it out to
It's
somebody.
like Uber. I mean, it's not Uber,
Uh,
Airbnb. It's like Airbnb.
that model was what I started this whole thing with, and this was 5 or 6 years before Uber was even supposedly
Before
called.
Uber. So you got a patent or something like that?
I did. I filed a patent on geolocation social network members, specifically for taxi dispatch, which was all on this, which was all about basically saying if we put those spare seats that you have in your car on an exchange, So the
Yeah.
people who are looking for something can in real time
So hold
buy.
up, hold up, hold up. You say on an exchange.
That's correct. Yeah, because I was a hedge fund,
Yeah.
I saw everything through the lens of financial intermediaries. So
Yeah.
when you want to buy a stock in Disney or Amazon or whatever, you go to a
Yeah.
stockbroker. Now, it's actually, if you think about this, this is a bit of leisurement, bit of sleight of hand. What is the likelihood that when you want to buy 3 shares of Amazon, that the stockbroker literally has 3 shares to sell you? It's basically very, very unlikely that you're going to get your order matched in real time. So, what the stockbroker does with the exchange is he sells you shares he doesn't own yet. So, you have a timestamp transaction, then he'll go into the market at some stage and buy those shares to net off the fact that he's done what he's done. And that's
Uh-huh.
how these things work. What they're doing is supply order and supply matching in real time. And the only efficient way to do that to meet the what we call the coincidence of wants. How do you give somebody something they want at the time they want it? How do you find buyers and sellers? The answer is an exchange. And the exchange works because it forces counterparties to honor the deals, you know?
Man,
So if
I
some
just love I love the way your mind works, bro. Like seriously, like I thought I was smart. Like I'm a pretty smart dude, but like you take it to another
no,
level.
no, all this is just very coincidental pattern matching. Just
Yeah.
I'm just curious about stuff. When I know I don't know, I go and look, and then sometimes I just stumble over things because I wasn't trying to solve any transport problems. I've been asked to do this thing for credit contagion. I never, sorry, it wasn't even credit contagion. It was capital structure arbitrage. So very simply, when you have a stock, let's say you got Amazon stock, Amazon has debt and it borrows money and it's paying back the money. It also has a
Yeah.
stock price. Now, it turns out there's a relationship, or there should be a relationship between the stock price and the debt price, and that's where credit prices come in. Because if you figure out that somebody can pay, then they've got high credit rating. If they, their ability to pay is diminishing because maybe they don't have as good earnings, then their credit rating moves down. And you can trade on this. It's a triangular relationship. So I was doing this, and what I realized was companies had social network character. It's like if I know you, right, and you have a friend called James, and James has a friend called Peter, right, and I've lent you money, and you've lent Peter money, and normally you've got AAA rating and everything else, but something might happen. Maybe some stock you'd invest in blows up, or your house gets hit by a meteorite or
Oh, so you
something.
saying that you look at like a social score for like a credit report,
Yeah, that's correct because what happened,
and
which caused
you
the
patented something like this or what?
no, I just folded it into geolocation of social network members. So what happens
Oh,
is,
so it's geolocation
yeah, so,
with social networks.
yeah. So what happens, for example, let's look at Ford, and this actually happened.
Yeah.
There's suppliers to Ford. They're people who make the batteries, the windshields, the tires, who sell to Ford, and Ford will be their biggest client. And they might be the most perfect company selling batteries, windshields, whatever. But if Ford was in trouble, which happened in 2003 onwards, and Ford defaulted or couldn't pay them, their credit rating would go. So their credit rating should be a function of Ford's credit rating. But what I noticed was this wasn't being taken into account. So there was social network links and connections which people were pretending didn't exist. And I thought, well, that's a trading opportunity. So as I was doing that, I realized, but this is the same thing as if you want to go from wherever your house is to, say, your workplace, and there's somebody else who also wants to go from near your house, maybe they live in the next street, to maybe the same downtown block, central business district, or maybe just one block across. You don't necessarily know each other. But if I was to draw a network of you, I'd find that you had the same needs at roughly the same time. So I could link those two things together. So there was a cascading effect. So the same idea between there might be somebody looking for a room that you don't know about, and you've got spare room in your house, and the two of you might not meet. Well, you can meet on an exchange, and that's what all these listing platforms are supposed to do. So I just, and remember, this was 23 years ago. This was before we had what are those listing sites you have in the United States for houses. I can't remember. There's so
Like
many.
Zillow.
Yeah, Zillow or Trulia or whatever they're called. This was before these were big. So I thought, why not do this for cars? There was BlaBlaCar, which I think started in 2004, but that didn't give you real time grouping. And what I wanted was it's only useful if you can literally go on some sort of app or send a text message, because there were no smartphones then, there was only text messages, and get an idea within 10 minutes that you can get a ride from the end of your street to where you want to go. So this was seen as like, well, this
Man,
is
but
mad.
even today, like a text message, SMS, it's not a bad idea. It's like, it's such a good usability. It's like, because think about the user experience for most of your apps. It's like, okay,
Thank, thank you. I've said this. I've said, you know what? People were thinking apps would kill SMS. Not really. SMS is still
it can be
simple,
used anywhere.
and even better. There's a big push now. You might have seen people going back to, simpler phones, and also now there are mesh networks,
Yeah.
which stop you having to rely on a central carrier. And mesh networks can, especially in Africa, for example, remember Africa leapfrogged a lot of the world because mobile banking was the thing
Yeah.
then. But SMS or something like encrypted SMS over mesh networks, that gives you added resilience. That's not, look, we're seeing a massive war in the Middle East right now, and I hope it calms down, but it doesn't look like it will. One of the biggest problems is if your data center struck or wherever else, you're going to have a problem. What we need to do is go back to these massively decentralized mesh networks for transport, power supply, communication, because you do not want some grid point going off and then everything goes dark. Same. So
You
this
want
the
it truly
principles.
decentralized, not because you have a centralized system, but it's bad because when it goes
Yes,
out, it's out.
it goes out, it's out, and there's nothing you can
Yeah.
do. And in fact, one of the best things ever, which might have been the way before that thing I told you about rotating saving and credit associations, ROSCAs, that is decentralized finance. And these things are centuries, if not millennia old. Every diaspora community has found the same thing. And we had what are called building societies in the UK. We've got a few left, but not many. But they were demutualized and turned into banks. And once they became banks, they became risky. They started making mortgage loans and whatever else, and they started lending in multiples rather than lending from what they had. And what a building society is a very similar idea to a rotating savings and credit association. It can't go bankrupt because you only lend against what you have. Okay, you trust the social character of the people you lend to. I'd be happy to lend to you. I don't need to know Peter, but if you're vouching for him or you lend him some of your thing, then that's the case. You don't lend to people you don't know. Now obviously this has scalability issues, but one of the important things is if you bring a verified trust parameter, which allows you to make those decisions, then I could lend somebody 3 steps away from me without worrying about a default risk. And in finance, that's what we call a credit default swap, where I will insure my loan by saying, well, this person is vouched for this person, so if that person doesn't pay, this other person will sort it out. And sometimes that vouching might be reputational rather than just pure money. Because often some of the strongest ties are your reputation. You don't want people to feel that you're not trustworthy, so you'd rather lose everything than your reputation, right? So these are the basic ideas behind both the energy stuff, the finance stuff, the transport, and the housing. It's the same idea. I'd love to say I saw it all in one go, but I didn't. I stumbled across it. I didn't know. I was just curious. I thought, I wonder what that is. Oh, hang on. Isn't this just the same thing as, looking to rent a room that you have spare, but you don't know anybody who you could trust who could rent the room, or you're driving from A to B and you have a spare ride. And these things have existed. You go to your university bulletin board and somebody says, I'm going from A to B. Does anybody want to share petrol with me? These things
Well,
are
I was
this.
at the train station the other day going to Toronto,
Uh-huh.
and it was so cold. There's a bridge that was a problem, so the train didn't come pick us up, right? Or it didn't. It couldn't leave because there's a. Anyway, the point is that we're sitting in a coffee shop next to the train station, and I'm there, and everybody, the entire train can't get to Toronto, and everybody's trying to figure out how they're going to get to Toronto because there's buses, and there's only a limited amount of buses to pick up a friggin' train, right? So everyone's
Oh my
stuck.
God. Yeah.
So I was like, hey guys, listen, I got a minivan and I got spare seats in there. If you need a ride, let me know. I'll drop you off somewhere, in Toronto. And they were like, cool, we'll split the gas. So they all pitched in and gave me $20. And I mean, okay,
Yeah.
it wasn't, it was just, it's like, it's so simple. It's like,
It's
you
so
got
simple.
this, and it's good for the environment
Even
too,
apart,
right?
yeah, even apart from the environment, it just solves so many coordination problems. What is interesting, it seems simple until you try and do the mathematics for it. And then this is another thing I found out. So, a guy called Jim Morris, a great mind, who's the dean of Carnegie Mellon, big university out there. They've got a Silicon Valley campus as well. He and Eric Schmidt of Google in the 1970s had done some PhD work together, and they tried to solve this problem for doing exactly what you said, which you might think sounds trivial, but it scales polynomially. It's a class of problem called NP hard. How do you group people to travel, in a minivan with
Yeah.
X seats somewhere else? So this was a version of the traveling salesman problem. It's a class of problems. This was called the bin packing problem. And if you look at it purely as a mathematician, you'll figure out really quickly it becomes almost impossible once you get into hundreds, like 70, 80 seats or whatever, or people rather. It becomes computationally unfeasible. Except I come from an aeronautics background, and when we design wings, you'll come up with a shape for wing, wing looks like this or whatever else, and you need to figure out where the airflow will go. And depending on what your mission profile is, if you're going supersonic, if you're doing high lift, whatever else, you have to design the wing the same way. So you have to do lots and lots of different wing shapes. And in the old days, I had to literally get pieces of wood and machine them into a shape and put them in a wind tunnel. It was all a big problem. Then people started using computers to do this, but even then, how many shapes do you test? So some biologist sat down with a mathematician sometime in the 70s and said, oh, this sounds like a biology problem. Well, what do you mean? How is it biology? You get two candidate solutions. They get together, they have a kid, and then you see if the kid's any closer to the perfect solution you want. If not, you get another kid, you have another solution mate with that solution. On you go until you find a population which fits. And the mathematician thinks, oh, hang on. And from there, genetic algorithms are born. So a genetic algorithm will get you a 99% solution, which for a mathematician is just, astonishingly imprecise. And this is the difference between engineers and mathematicians. And the engineer says, look, that's good enough. That'll work. It might not be the right thing down to the microsecond or millisecond, but if it's close to 10 seconds, who cares? It's a good match. It might only be 99.9%, which is to a mathematician not a solution at all, but to an engineer, that's good enough. So I applied this thinking because I didn't know any better. You got to understand, I had no training in this. I just saw a pattern. I thought, isn't this just like wing design? But if we apply this to this problem, we can get good solutions. And off I went. And this pissed off some people because imagine if you spent 30 years saying this is impossible and then some idiot black guy from Liverpool just does it in the night because he doesn't know any better. Looks bad, but that's what happened. So I came up with this, and this is the basis of everything I demonstrated from 2004 to about 2009. And that's when my life got very difficult. I got put on all sorts of lists and had my bank accounts closed down. And there was a complete press ban on me for around 10 years. It's only when I met this guy called Kevin Boras, who's done some podcasts with me, great guy. And he's one of the longest serving transport editors in the UK. And he'd been told about me by one of my board advisors, a guy called Keith McCabe, who's actually the chair of the US Department, the US Transportation Research Board for about 10 years. He did intelligent transport systems and AI as a subcommittee chair. So he said to Kevin, this guy, Eric, he's for real. I've checked him out. Nobody will talk about him for some reason. Can you write an article? Kevin came up to Liverpool He's a massive football fan, so that helped. He interviewed me for about 12 hours. And he said, I'm going to go and check everything you've said. Give me about 3 weeks. Off he went. This was 2018. He came back and said, oh my God, you're telling the truth. I've checked everything. Everything you says checks out. So he wrote a good article for me. But apart from him, that's literally the only press I've had, apart from Ibube helping me, in the last, say, 8 years. So this was a weird thing where what seems like a simple problem, we all have a coordination problem, that I'm going there, I've got seats in my minivan, can't people share? Yeah, it's much harder than it appears. As soon as you try and do the solving, if you try and do it like a mathematician, you'll argue that this would take 1 billion years with all the computers we ever could make, and they still wouldn't find a solution. But if you go for an imperfect solution, you'll find a good enough solution, something which will get you within 2 or 3 seconds, or maybe a maximum of 10 seconds of the best solution. And to a mathematician, that's like unacceptable. That's not rigor. But to an engineer, hey, we deal with tolerances, that works. And the same thing with housing, the same thing with energy, the same thing with predicting who will default in which order with finance. So I've been doing the same bloody thing for 30 years, which sounds bizarre. Like, time isn't what it used to be, is it? You blink and, the 90s were just round the corner. You probably remember Rob the Bass and It Takes Two and Young MC and Bust a Move. And that seems like just last summer or something. And all of a sudden it's almost 30
Well, we
years
just
later.
blinked, and we found out.
Yep. It's mad. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many. The funny thing is, Uber had something like, I don't know, $60 billion put in, and they scaled. And, it's really impressive what they did, because the taxi industry, oh my God. I was warned. I didn't listen because I just didn't know. But the taxi industry is a lot more bare knuckled than it might appear. There's a lot of very dangerous, very well connected people in the taxi industry. So I'm amazed that Travis didn't get whacked, honestly, or some attempts, maybe he did. But their unit economics doesn't make sense. It won't work. They'll always lose money unless you can put at least I don't know if it was 2.1 or 2.4, some number like this, people per cab on average. Not every single cab, but on average, that's what you need. Otherwise, you're just going backwards. There's no way to make money legally anyway in the taxi business unless you scale. There's a lot of other ways the taxi business does make money. I'm not saying all illegal, but it's a great way, because it was a cash only business for a long time. It's a great way to hide a lot of other flows. But ultimately, one person in a cab doesn't work. And a lot of the way that taxi firms made money was by renting the cab at 90% interest to drivers. Because if you're an immigrant and you haven't really got anything else, one of the first things you can do is drive a cab. I mean, legal things you can do is drive a cab. And that's what would happen. So fundamentally, I mean, I'm not averse to working with Uber. I'm saying, look, you're using my patent. I'm not bothered. You've made it more valuable. I'll license it to you. I'll also help you actually make money. I'll show you the way you should have done stuff. I'm well past the ego of, oh, I just want them to, I want them to win. I actually want them to win. I want them to make transport better for everyone, especially in Africa. And this mesh network
So that
thing.
that that that's interesting that you said that, because I currently have an opportunity in Zambia where
Mhm.
we could implement something like everything that you've said and more. So imagine, if you will, a metaverse, right? And it's a metaverse with all these different nodes in the metaverse,
Yeah.
right? But that metaverse is a video game. But that video game is actually an exchange powering it,
Hmm.
right? So our platform, think of it as a payment gateway with a tokenization engine on that. So you mint different NFT or objects, game objects in the game. It goes onto the token.
Hmm.
So when you think of a vehicle, right? A vehicle is an object in the metaverse, right? And you want to go from world A to world B. Well, that might mean that you can drive someone, but you can pay for that work to happen in advance, and you just make like a commission over time, right? You can lend money in this crazy video game, right? And we can call this place Napier, right? So within Napier, we also have solar farms that are producing energy. And the base unit of currency in this virtual world is a token that's made from solar energy that's doubled as a carbon credit, right? That we call it a NDP. It's a solar credit. It's like the base. So with that NDP now, once that energy is being produced in this solar world, in this global metaverse Napier that we're talking about, we have Texxi service, which is sexy, right? And then you've got all your different stuff like your solar farms that are producing energy. You've got your copper mines that are producing ore. You have bonded warehouses that are storing the ore. You have copper manufacturing facilities that are creating copper cathode from the same energy from the solar farms. And you're also creating ultra-fine copper powder from the same energy, all ESG based. And then there's also like a gold refinery that's minting gold, real bullion gold, that's using energy from the same solar farm. So now all of a sudden you've got provenance, right? And then you've got a maize milling plant as well, all within this virtual world. So that same energy then it then pays the miners. It pays the employers, the laborers in this world. But we've got now a Texxi service in that area where people can use the same solar credit in that same ecosystem. So now we have the money circulating within our little virtual world, but it's actually a physical world.
I'm getting what you're saying, but I'm thinking we don't even have to move it to that virtual. If we start with the idea of a road as a commons that everybody has a stake in, and nobody owns it exactly, just the same as the abundance commons in the world. What if when you don't use the road, you're being paid, and you only pay to use the road if you use it more than a certain number of minutes per day? Maybe we say everybody's got 40 minutes of road use, and anything above that you have to pay. But the whole point is, and if you use below it, you get paid cash. Now, what that does is it creates a funding mechanism for the road, and it also makes it fair because older people who might not be working as much anymore need a pension. They're getting paid because they don't use the road as much. And what this does is it solves a big congestion problem. I don't know what it's like in Harare, but if it's like Kampala, the roads must be really jammed. Lusaka as well. In Zambia.
Most African cities, Nairobi too, like it's bad.
There we go. So that's something which can literally generate cash, which will be hypothecated to be spent only on the roads or to pay people back on.
But people are being so taxed right now as it is, man.
This is the exact opposite of tax. This is
but I'm saying in a lot of these countries, the tolls, they go to certain departments and they take care of the roads. If you know what I'm saying, it's like it doesn't get distributed to anybody.
Well, no, this is a whole point of exactly what I'm saying. It can't be stolen. The road has its own personality. The road is.
No, I know, but I'm saying people are already overtaxed. If you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's like to introduce another tax on top of all these other taxes. Africans are some of the highest tax people in the world, bro.
But this is a negative tax. It pays you. It's a tax where it flows in the opposite direction.
Let's move on.
Well, it's just it was something from, again, I got
maybe in the UK could work, but Africa, oof.
Well, the paper I'd written in the early 2000s, which I didn't think anybody would read, I can't even remember how I published it, but somebody found it, and there's a think tank called the Institute of Economic Affairs, and they invited me in and started introducing me to people, and then I didn't even know who they were, because you've got to understand that I stumbled into things. I'm so clueless. And then it turns out this is the think tank that Margaret Thatcher used for all her things. And all these people were all the top bods in the UK. It's like, well, I don't even know. I didn't even know who they were. And so some of these ideas come from Milton Friedman and some of the they're called Austrian economists.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of they're very against tax, as am I. But unfortunately, you do need to have. I'd love to say we could do that taxes, but there has to be a bridge to there. And the whole point is this is a way to you only pay for what you use, and when you don't use it, you get paid as well. So it's not even a tax. And the same thing with land value taxation. You know, all those derelict buildings, example. Why do we charge people tax when they improve something, but we don't charge them tax when things are left derelict? I mean, tax is awful, but something called land value
Yeah, sorry.
taxation.
You're talking to somebody who feels overtaxed as it is. So
Yeah,
when
well,
I hear
I think
taxes, I'm like,
I
ooh.
I think taxes are
I'm like,
completely.
oh man.
Yeah, listen, I think taxes are immoral. It's just mind-boggling to me that you do work and somebody who hasn't done any of that work can demand that you hand over stuff. It's like,
Yeah,
what's the
no,
big deal?
I'm like a libertarian, brother.
Oh no, that's why I am. This think tank, the Institute of Economic Affairs. It's the premier think tank in the UK. It's the oldest one. It's libertarian. So they came to me and said, "Oh, this is knock theory, or this is von Mies, or what?" I never heard of any of these people. I had to go and read up on them. Oh, I didn't know that. I intuited the same things by accident because I share a distaste for taxation. I think taxation is just
It's immoral.
it's immoral. It's absolutely immoral.
And
But
it's a form of slavery.
it absolutely is. But what if for the commons, right? So we're all put here, however we've come here, whether you believe in the universal creator or whichever theory of how we got here. Um, how can you say that somebody owns land and can charge you rent just for living on the land, and you get taxed, and it's just crazy. I wrote a paper recently about deconflation, hypothecation, and remutualization to solve the housing crisis. Imagine if you write a song, I know you write songs, right? And let's say you're renting your house, let's say you didn't own it and you're renting your house, then your landlord says, "That's a great song, Tyrone. I own it because you wrote it while you were renting in my house." What would you say? When you say, "What are you talking about? How can you say you own whatever I produced while I was renting from you?"
Okay, this is a brilliant segue to the song that I just wrote.
God.
Uh, yeah. Hey. They told me the future was simple and clean. Everything rented, nothing to keep. Just log in, subscribe, and quietly comply. While the real power sits way up high. They said, don't worry, the system will run. You won't need land, you won't need none. But something inside me started to rise. A fire that wouldn't accept their lies. I wasn't born just to borrow the sky. I'll rent every dream until the day that I die. I refuse to own nothing and be happy.
Excellent.
I refuse to live small and stay trapped. I refuse to let the future be leased. While the few hold the keys to the feast. Take it back. I want land, I want freedom, I want equity. I want a stake in the destiny. If we're building tomorrow from cold and steel, then the people should own what is real. I refuse to own nothing and be happy. My grandfather crossed the Savannah wide, chasing the promise on the other side. Ox cart rolling through dust and flame, searching for fortune, carving a name. They fought for the right to plant and build, to claim the ground that sweat had tilled. And now they say we should give it away, just smile and stream our lives each day. But history whispers through blood and bone, the future belongs to those who own. I refuse to own nothing and be happy. I refuse to be quiet and adapt. I refuse to let the dream be sold. While we rip back the silver and gold. I want mines, I want cities, I want shares. I want builders and dreamers everywhere. If the world is being rebuilt today, then the people should have their say. I refuse to own nothing. This is the age of the token and chain. Right, going to ship breaks every gate and domain. Gold in the ground, sun in the sky. How would the build? How would the try? Not a kingdom for kings alone, but a network with millions on. I refuse to own nothing in the I refuse to let that passion collapse.
Okay, what do you think about that?
I think that is fantastic. The anti-WEF song, which is, I just sent you on the chat the sort of three-word slogan: deconflate, hypothecate, and remutualize. They sound difficult, but very simple. Exactly what you said. Everybody has to have equity. By existing, you have a stake in the commons, rather than saying that somebody you've never met who can say, "Oh, God promised me this 3,000 years ago, so you're all my slaves." That is absolutely ridiculous. The whole point is, whatever work you do is the product of your work. Nobody's got any right to take it away from you or demand tribute. When the slaves had got out of slavery in Barbados, they had what were called chattel houses. You could argue this was the first kind of trailer homes, okay? Because they couldn't get any claim on land, slavery had been ended only in name alone, but in reality, they were still victims of these landlords. So what they did instead was they would just pick their houses up and move to a new part of land where the landlord would charge them less, okay? So they didn't actually have to stay on that land. And that forced that was a market forcing the landlords to charge less rent. Obviously, landlords could collaborate and set a cartel, but somehow this worked well enough. And the same thing we could do now with taking away this idea that your shelter vehicle has to be your wealth vehicle, because that ties you to one spot in more of a way than serfdom or peasantry ever did. Imagine if your equity was portable. Much like your rating for if you're safe to travel with is portable, it's to do with you. So imagine if when you rent a place, the rent isn't going to a black hole and paying a mortgage of some landlord. Instead, it's being stored in a trust. It's maybe being invested in gold mining, stock markets, and diversified things. So it's grown at 6 or 7% a year. And 40% of whatever rent you pay has to go into this portable unit. And this is what I call synthetic equity, which is just the same expression of everything we've been talking about, from finance, electricity, and transport applied to housing. And exactly what your song is saying. You're not put here to own nothing and be happy. This whole point is you will own.
So why don't you own nothing and be happy?
Yeah, well, when they want to reduce carbon, that carbon is you and me. When they're talking about carbon reduction,
It's us.
Yeah, eat them bugs, peasant. All right. So this is the thing. If you haven't heard of Murray Rothbard, Hayek, von Mises, Nock, these are just fantastic Austrian libertarian economists. Friedman's there as well, but Friedman believed in monetarism. I think one of the worst cons in the history of humanity is the whole idea of fiat money. It's just beyond comprehension.
Oh yeah, I mean, have you read the Bitcoin Standard?
I haven't read it recently. I think I read it when it came out, but fundamentally, gold was good because gold couldn't be faked. Still is good. There's only a certain amount of it and whatever else. Bitcoin does rely on. We need mesh networks to absolutely make sure that works, because we're going to be seeing more and more patchy things going out. And one of the best things ever are mesh networks. And ironically, Africa not being that tied to big centralized server farms or whatever else can lead the way again in some of these things. In the Czech Republic,
I love the way you think, Eric. Like, because
it's just
so logical. It's so logical.
Look, I just fall into things. I trip over, I get blocked on one thing, I bounce off, I'm picking myself up, and I notice something else. That's all that's happened. Czech Republic.
You're a polymath.
Well, so are you. So you look all.
I was told that the other day. I thought I had ADHD. The dude says no, you don't have ADHD. You're a polymath. So I said, what's a polymath? I didn't know what a polymath was.
You don't put yourself in a box. You don't let yourself be put in one groove. Oh, you can only think about this. I found solutions to problems I didn't even know were problems because I came from a different
I don't
background.
trust experts. I don't trust experts.
Yeah, well, experts in one thing only, and they haven't
Yeah.
gone across silos. I was at a conference in Manchester just last week where most of the thing was how do we get people from these silos to talk to people in these silos? And I said, well, just stop saying to people you're a biologist or you're a mathematician or you look. It might look like ADHD to a lot of people, like, but how can you have done electricity and finance and libertarian economics and pilot? It just is what it is. I'm curious, and I don't feel that
Curious, exactly.
that's
That's
it.
what it is. It's like, there's so much to know and there's so much to do, and it's like like I got 3 degrees: accounting, computer science, and cybersecurity, and then I've done AI, all types of entrepreneurship in AI, IoT, edtech, fintech, banking, digital marketing. And they gave me a PhD, and I was like, "Oh, you're giving me a PhD because I've done all this stuff?" And you know, I think someone like you and me, we need to put our polymaths together and figure this out. If you know what I'm saying.
I think we covered a lot of ground in here,
Yeah.
and we can go over the transcript later. But fundamentally, what you've said, the whole metaverse idea for Zambia, we can start off with looking at road space-time commons
Yeah.
allocation. Even if we tokenize road space-time, I produced something for Bube for Abbey Estate where I was saying this exactly. It would be a way also for or was in Ambra, I think it was in Ambra, for innocent motor vehicles to sell more cars with less risk. Because what would happen is part of the payment for the lease of the car comes from your road token allocation. Now, you definitely own something. You own what you do and how you do it, and that's tied to you. But you have more. It's like when you go on holiday, you don't buy the hotel. You rent a room. You
You
rent a
rent
room
a
for
room for a week,
2 days.
right?
A week, there you go, and you don't feel bad that I didn't own the hotel, so that wasn't any good. You own, it's called burglary if somebody came into your hotel room even when you weren't there while you're renting it. So for that period, you own it. And then if you behave well, as I had this happen to me in Singapore, if the hotel manager likes you, the price comes down, because your reputation and the way you turn up and you're the sort of guest they want in the hotel, then, your prices come down and whatever else. So that's what you own. You own your reputation and you can acquire and use more resources that way.
What if
So
what if I was to tell you that we are setting up Dapey Studios in 5 different cities around the world,
mhm.
starting in Waterloo, where I'm based, Toronto, New Kingston, Jamaica, Lusaka, Zambia, Harare, Zimbabwe, Cape Town, South Africa, and Dubai.
That is fantastic.
And
Although
guess what these
Dubai,
studios would do?
go on.
They would be gaming studios. So we would basically digitize everything in our metaverse in Dapia. So in Dapia is the land that you go through. It's almost like Fortnite, but it's Dapia, right? And you get into like a spaceship and you can travel to different asteroids and you can mine those asteroids. So now you have an entire exchange inside of Dapia, right? And all those assets equal actual physical assets in the physical world.
I get where you're going. I see the metaverse thing as a good step. It's good to gamify, but we can do the same thing in real world with exchanges. We do this with the S&P 500 or
Well,
anything
I
anyway.
already have that built. I have an exchange built. I have the wallet built. I have the payment gateway built. All that is done. I'm just trying to figure out the interface because I worked in for a digital marketing agency for like over 5 years for different parts, and I got to learn about user experience.
Yeah,
And
very important.
it's like
Very
I've been trying to sell mining projects in Africa, in Zambia, and it's very hard to get the point across. Whereas if you could walk through an entire ecosystem, a hotel in Jamaica, a mine in Zambia, and you could see and speak to the owner and use AI and give a different user experience, some of the returns from these assets are like 1,000x. You're getting early on a mining project that's going to be producing gold. I mean, those returns are insane. You know.
No, I get what you're saying. I think there's a way, especially since you're doing it in several cities. Think about some like synthetic equity, simply because people can, when they're renting, maybe they start off in Cape Town and they move to Kingston, or then they move to Waterloo. Imagine if they're not losing rent and they're building a portable equity portfolio. That's something which straight away you're tokenizing that whole experience. There's so many different ways, and I'd love to, if you've got a website or an app I could look at for this thing.
Yeah, I mean, this actually just came about in the past 2 weeks. I've been talking to some developers in Jamaica. They based some big bankers in Toronto, connected to the stock exchange and all. Like, everything's already set up. We got a brokerage set up there. Everything's ready to go. And yeah, so this is, and then I got a video game company that I'm partnering with that's going to actually help me build the studios. So we're going to have all these studios around the world, tokenizing, digitizing the world.
Brilliant.
So I need a strong economist, somebody, that's worked in a hedge fund, that knows all the stuff, that might even have some patents that it could bring into the table. Who knows, maybe we tokenize the patent, the Texxi patent. You can get your own little distributorship, or your little franchise in a part of Zambia. You want to start a business. This is an easy way to do it.
Always happy to explore. I mean, I can't commit to anything until we've gone for everything, but always happy to explore. As I said, very simple ideas, but it turns out that to do them properly, as Uber and others have found out, it's actually far more difficult. The user experience is almost everything, by the way, which you've said and understood. That's all we learned. SMS was nice and easy, still is. Apps were better, but all my bank accounts were closed down by 2000.
Well, what if you could do all three? What if you could do all three? Like SMS, app, and
that's exactly what I've got on the latest versions for the last 7 years. So, app, web app, and also SMS, because it's just a way in. And later on, there might even be wearables, or I don't like the idea of brain chip implants, but that seems to be coming.
It's like, nothing, but take our chip.
Yeah, and the chip will own you.
It's like, what? And then it's all the same guys that are coming up with these ideas, right? They're like, ooh, let's put a chip in someone's head.
Well, they've done it with, as you've seen for some of these files which have been released, there have been like Island of Dr. Moreau type experiments being done for the last 50 years. Just horrifying stuff.
You're saying in the Jeffrey Epstein files is...
Yeah. Oh,
they were experimenting on people?
For real, yeah. The Zorro Ranch in New Mexico. Just some stuff came out either yesterday or today. I just couldn't believe what I was reading.
What did it say?
Basically, they're making clones. They were putting chips in things. They're seeing if they can control organisms with chips in there, biohuman interfaces. A lot of the work you saw, which was supposedly from MIT or whatever, was funded by Epstein. And the Zorro Ranch, he had all sorts of DNA experiments and was making clones using his own DNA. Oh, it's just, it's hard to know what's real. So I just wrote a little script to download every PDF on the White House site. I hope it won't hit the rate limits. And I'll just go through them. The good thing with AI LLMs now is you at least they can go through a lot of things, give you a summary, and allow you to drill down into certain bits once they've given you a summary of this bit's about the human experimentation, this bit's about whatever. And they made a bionic fly or something with neurons, so they were able to basically put 80,000 neurons together, and this thing started behaving exactly like a fly would in the wild and whatever else. It wasn't born, it was literally made. It just sounds like the worst science fiction we used to read if you remember, Cyberpunk, as you said at the start of this conversation, William Gibson, all that stuff, which was the hard SF from the 80s. That was when it was just being really, so 1982 onwards, the Blade Runner film was released and hard SF was only just coming to the fore. Well, all the stuff they would talk about then seems to have been actually going on. So here we are 44, 45 years later, and I'm reading things from these Epstein files and thinking, oh my God, this sounds like the worst bit of William Gibson or Greg Bear or something. Things that you just thought, ah, that won't happen. It's good to explore in science fiction, but luckily that will never happen. And there it is. So these Neuralink things are much further along than people are pretending, I think, because they've
Oh
actually
man,
done these experiments. Yeah,
that was very
horrific.
interesting. I think we should do more podcasts, man. Like
I think we
this,
should. This has been good to explore.
yeah, this has
And
been a fascinating discussion. I really have these moments where I can have such complex concepts being spoken about, and it's two brothers from Africa, you know,
well,
so a Zambian, Zimbabwean, and a Ugandan that grew up in Liverpool. You grew up in Liverpool. I grew up in Texas, and now Waterloo. You
yeah.
know, this has been a great conversation. It's just I think I need to come to the UK. We could go watch a Liverpool game.
And
It'd
I
be
need
cool
to
to even
come
like
back
say
here.
maybe Grobler can join us. Bruce Grobler, if he's out there, meet us in
Yeah,
Liverpool.
it's a
You know,
small place, but it's easy to get in touch with people. So, same thing. I would like to come back to Canada. Haven't been to Canada since 2023, I think. I was last in
yeah.
Toronto visiting a friend, and yeah, Toronto has apparently changed quite a bit in the last 20 years. I've been told.
Toronto
So,
is, what in my opinion, it's one of the most dynamic cities on the planet. I mean, I always tell people, I say, if I didn't move to Toronto into the GTA, I wouldn't have been able to build what I've built.
mm,
Obviously, if I stayed in Africa, it would have been just a great idea, you know. And
mm,
in Texas, you don't really have those networks like you have in this part of the world. In Toronto, you got access to capital markets, you got access to gaming studios, you got access to fintech, to crypto. I mean, I've made contacts with bankers in Jamaica, stock SEC in Jamaica, in different parts of the world, and it's just because of being in this community, you
that's
know.
very good. Networks are 90% of everything. There's an idea which you can't spread via people or collaborators. Just it's like it never happened. It dies in place. It's so important. And yeah, I'll send you this thing I wrote, that paper. I'd love your feedback on it because I think once we get one hit or even tokenize 1% of Texi or something, right, and we've got some cash, we can create a complete global Pan-African network to allow anybody with an idea anywhere to get some sort of funding to at least start scaling. Because one of the big
We
problems,
can put it in
especially,
the metaverse. We'll put everything in the metaverse. It'll be
yeah,
an exchange. And, I wrote a paper called, well, for droplet token. It's basically tokenizing all the energy produced using IoT devices that my company owns. We own the IP. It's basically, it's called a UTMD, uninterrupted uh, tokenizing power meter, right?
mhm,
And it basically sits on top of the solar plant, and it just listens to how much energy it captures, how much energy is produced, and then it sends it off to the tokenizer, and our tokenization engine tokenizes it into a carbon credit, and that now sits inside of the universe, right? Now there's we spoke about data centers. A friend of mine in Kitchener has a company that creates these decentralized data centers inside of a container. So he puts like 6 GPUs in there. Costs like $500,000, but within 6 months it practically pays off for itself. And it uses solar. It uses Starlink. So all you need is Starlink and solar, and you can put these. It's plug and play. So we can ship these to Africa in the middle of nowhere. We could be doing AI compute, capturing solar, minting gold in bullion and on the blockchain, as well as copper cathode production, all ESG based, right? So this is something that I've been invited to speak about the on a panel because of the droplet token that the paper that I launched. So yeah, I would actually love to to partner on writing a paper. You know, we should write a paper, a research paper.
There's so many great ideas to explore, and what I just love to do again is bounce ideas without any. I mean, AIs have been great for this. They're a bit crap until about 2025, but they're being great. I learned all sorts of new words recently in concepts, or concepts I didn't have words for, like entrepot and crypto depression, which is actually a geographical term, and topological high betweenness, which I explained everything I'd seen in Liverpool. So these things are great, and it's always absolutely fantastic and a pleasure and honor to be able to have shared some of these ideas. And I think we'll definitely have to have a few more podcasts and see what else we can explore.
No, this has to become a weekly thing. So I love the discussions, and and again, we met. You're an ambassador.
Yeah,
for the State of African Diaspora.
Yeah,
and you represent Uganda?
No, the UK.
Oh, you represent the UK? Okay.
Yeah, I'm a roving ambassador for the UK. I was actually recruited in Qingdao in China. I was there for the Chinese government of Shandong had invited me to go and help Qingdao with their traffic and whatever else. This was unfortunately just before the COVID outbreak. So I got a 2-year visa just as that 2-year COVID lockdown happened. It was one of those things. And while I was there, I met Collarwall and Michael, who's an ambassador as well. I think he was the ambassador for China. And we were just sitting next to each other on a plane back to Shanghai. I'd taken the train up to Qingdao, which was amazing. But I took the flight back. And he said, "Oh, I'm an ambassador for SOAD. I'd never heard of SOAD. Would you like to come and meet the Ethiopian Consul General to Shanghai? Because we're meeting him." And I said, "Okay." And so 2 days later, I'm there in the Consul General office in Shanghai for Ethiopia. And they were launching their satellite that week or the day after. And I read about it, so I happened to, they couldn't believe I knew. I knew it was, it's going to be a low Earth orbit satellite for agricultural. How do you know that? Well, I just like to keep abreast. I did aeronautics. I'm into space stuff, and that's how I got involved. It was just, amazing coincidences, which that's how we're talking.
Yeah.
So
because we also met Ebube George, who's the Minister of Trade.
Yep.
For the State of the African Diaspora, and he introduced me to the king of Abia State, Nigeria, who was the one of the ex leaders at Shell Nigeria.
Yep.
So he called me the chancellor.
Yeah, well, this is how these connections have to work. That's how networks can work. You can discover things. You can traverse a network. You can find these eigenstates and eigenvectors, and there's so many things which map between different concepts and different fields, which don't need to be separate fields. We just have created these barriers for no reason. So
we're talking about SOAD, and SOAD, it's recognized as the 6th region of Africa, right? Which is the diaspora, all the Africans that left either 400 or 500 years ago as slaves, but are now free people in the western part of the world. And we estimate there's something like 400 million people of African descent, right? Now, imagine we had a virtual land, and we call this place Dapia in the metaverse. And in that Dapia, you can have a solar-powered token. You know what I'm saying? And the solar-powered token basically powers everything, and it's the base unit of energy. If you want work to be done, if you want to be picked up in a taxi, if you want to buy gold or whatever, get any type of work done, pay for land, pay for a week stay at a mansion in Jamaica, a 5,000 square foot mansion you can buy in and buy a timeshare using the same token. You could rent out your timeshare to somebody else using the same token.
It's a replacement for this conjured from thin air fiat money nonsense, which saves us all. Yeah, I get that. And as I said, one of the things which I really wanted, this is the whole point. I remember unfortunately, he lost his sanity because very, very smart people can do that way. But one of my first business partners in Texxi, a guy called Matthew, one of the smartest people I've ever met, electrical engineer, met him at Swiss Bank, which was UBS when we were working in the 90s. he worked out exactly what I was up to. He said, "This is a currency." This was before Bitcoin was a thing. This
Oh.
was 3 years before Bitcoin was even that paper. He worked out, I said, "You've just created a whole new financial system." Yep, that's what it is. What we're doing is we're basically saying that road space time is a good we all have access to, whether you use it or not. When you don't use it, you get paid. When you do use it, you have to pay something. And if you are kind of in the middle, it's technically you're consuming as much as you're being paid, so it's like a zero sum. But fundamentally, that's what it is. It has to be minted from existing. Also, there's another thing we can do, which is when you do the computations to group as many people into as few vehicles as possible to make the best use of that road space, that is a product which can be tokenized. So what I call Texxi was a crypto computation currency, because rather than doing now there's a big push towards proof of useful work rather than just proof of work for a lot of cryptocurrencies. One of the most useful works you can do is optimizing to reduce the amount of energy or vehicle trips you need for a certain number of people in a certain
Ah,
context.
so you're saying it's like an ESG thing?
It turns out it's an ESG thing because the whole point about this is it's not just an arbitrary calculation factorizing large primes or whatever else. It's an actual NP hard problem which you can prove has been solved, and therefore on the blockchain, which shows that you got a certain amount of tokens for having solved this problem. Maybe you have a processor running on, NDP type of solar powered computation, and it's doing a certain number of calculations per second, and it's giving you uh, good outcomes to say, here's the most efficient way to move these 3,000 people from this part of Lusaka to this part of Lusaka at this time, and this was a verified solution. Therefore, you get paid this much. Now that's like gold. It can't be faked. It's you can only produce a certain amount of these things per second or per minute or whatever else, and they have to be proven to be correct. And as you know, with MP hard problems,
That's
you
a brilliant analogy. I like that.
yeah. Well, the whole point is you can verify quickly. That's the whole point. It might be
Hmm.
hard to find a solution, but once you have a solution, you
And what
can
did you
verify
call it? Proof of use of work?
proof of useful work, POUW, because use,
Useful.
yeah, because one of the things behind Bitcoin was proof of work,
Yeah.
which makes it like gold, but then you're just burning cycles,
You're
creating
just
energy.
using energy unnecessarily.
Yeah, there we
Yeah.
go. So what you can do is you can have something which is computationally and cryptographically proven to have been a solution, but it's also useful. It also then reduces the number of car trips per given city. And there's lots of other things. I mean, you can do this with protein folding or other types of highly computational work. As you know, I mean, these quantum computers and all these things that we can do with AIs, somebody's gonna, I don't know if an AI will break the MP hard conjecture, P equals MP.
I think they've solved it in the latest update with Bitcoin. They solved the whole quantum issue.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
But the P equals MP, I'll send you a video, a great description of which
You
you'll
know,
really
it's
like
actually
it.
not that complicated. If you just have a ledger on a separate ledger that's logging every transaction that's going into Bitcoin, you could just like compare what's in the ledger and be like, oh, this is not adding up. you know?
Yeah, well, look, blockchain itself is from Sumerian times. We had tally sticks in the Middle Ages where you had a gnarled stick and you slit it down the middle, and the two gnarls were there. So you gave one gnarl to one of your people living in a far off land, and you had one in the central registry. And when you had to bring them together, they had to reconcile so people couldn't. So that was the first kind of blockchain. But I know what you're saying. But the P equals MP problem, that is, again, I didn't even know what that was. I couldn't have even told you what the problem was, let alone the solution. But as it turns out, I was solving it orthogonally with genetic algorithms and good enough solutions. And I was solving a very specific part. I wasn't disproving or proving one theorem. I just said, well, we can split this problem space into this, and this thing solves this, and we can get a good enough solution to move millions of people every day, much more efficiently.
Wow,
Okay, sorry,
that's
I've got
brilliant.
to. No, yeah, but this has been fantastic. That hour, oh my God, hour and a half.
Hour
Wow,
and a
we're only
half,
on
yeah.
we're on for 40 minutes. Really sorry, that flew by. So we got a
So
lot more to talk
with
about.
the general tradition, at the end we play the university through adversity track, and
Okay.
I think you deserve to have this played because your story is incredible. You did so much. I don't want to tell the users too much. I want them to study you. I want them to read your blog and what is it, ericmasaba.com,
Yep, that's correct.
and find out more about Eric, because Eric is a fascinating person. He's one of the most intelligent people that I've met in my life. He's appeared in movies, and most people don't even know who he is. And if they knew who he is, they would buy into his token on our platform that we're going to launch pretty soon. All right, here's a song.
University, yeah, the adversity. Some people go to universities where they're chosen. Others go to universities where they're tested. In 1996, Derek Balls didn't have an agent. He didn't have a recruiter. He didn't have a system. He flew himself to Long Beach State with nothing but belief. He sat in the crowd at a Pro-Am game next to the director of the feedlot Pro-Am League. She turned to him and asked one question. Do you want to play against the Lakers? That wasn't an invitation, that was a test. Derek said yes. He guarded Kobe Bryant for 3 quarters. And by the end of that game, everything changed. Soon after, he signed his first professional contract in Taipei, Taiwan. Sometimes the world believes in you somewhere else first. This is university through adversity. The education you get when no one is coming to save you. Welcome to Courage to Lead.
So this whole podcast is about Derek Bowles, who I met about 2 years ago at a conference in Vegas, and he used to be a professional basketball player and a coach, and he won the G League, and they actually went to the finals and they won. And he's also quite a fascinating person. He campaigns for mental health and overcoming challenges, because he didn't have the financial resources to take him to that next level, but he didn't give up, and he ended up traveling on his own dime to Long Beach to a Long Beach tournament, and the FILA president was there and asked him, "Do you want to guard Kobe in this game?" That was, I think the Lakers were playing at the time, and he says, "Yeah, sure." So he gets on the team, and he guards Kobe for 3 quarters, and dominates Kobe, and ends up getting a job in Taipei for a professional basketball team in Taipei.
Fantastic.
Yeah, very interesting story. But on our next podcast, I'd like to have Derek on there with yourself, and we just have that discussion. So, yeah, pleasure, Eric.
Thank
Take care.
you, Dr. Moody. Thank you so much. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye.